Hello everyone, I'd like to welcome you to today's web conference, Integration and Extensibility Enhancements for Dynamics 365 Human Resources. My name is Evan and I'll be your moderator today. We are broadcasting this web conference through Teams live events and the audio can be heard through your device speakers. This session is being recorded on behalf of the Microsoft Corporation, and by participating in the session using Microsoft Teams, your name, email address, phone number, and/or title may be viewable by other session participants. If you do not consent to being a part of a recorded session, please disconnect at this time. Attendees may access the web conference recording via the same registration link that was used to attend today's live broadcast. If you have questions for the presenters or need support, please use the Q&A panel located on the right side of your screen. Our presenters will be responding to your questions throughout and at the end of the event. Thank you for your patience during these announcements. Now let's get started. Presenting for us today from Microsoft, we have Jared Hall, Principal Program Manager. Jared, over to you.
Thanks, Evan. As Evan said, I'm Jared Hall. I'm a Principal Program Manager on the Dynamics 365 Human Resources Engineering team. Joining me is Colin O'Connor. He's an Engineering Manager on the Human Resources Engineering team. And we're excited to present some of the work that we've done in integration and extensibility enhancements for Dynamics 365 Human Resources in the 2020 release Wave 2. Walking through these, and to start out, I want to start by talking about the digital feedback loop to set the context for what we're going to talk about in integration and extensibility through the rest of the presentation. When we look at the digital feedback loop, this is the context in which we think about our Dynamics 365 across the business, our business applications. We have these four areas that are the four primary operations of your business: to empower your employees, transform products, optimize operations, and engage with customers. These are the four things that drive value across your business and the four activities that you need to really make your business grow. In human resources, we work in the empower employees, but looking at working with your workforce. But as we look at this, the way that your business needs to work is to make sure that these operations don't happen in silos, that all of the data from these various areas of the application work together and come together in a common data service that can be that you can apply intelligence to and make sure that all of this is working together to drive value across the business. I guess an example would be when you're engaging customers. You have a team that's out there working with your customers, engaging customers, and bringing in that real-time information and feedback from those customers, and that needs to come into this digital feedback loop so that that information can be applied in real time to the transformation of your products. Another example is in optimizing your operations. When you have those operations, you have certain skills that are needed in your workforce to optimize those operations, and looking at the data from your operations and from those applications that drive those operations, bringing that data into a common data store that can work together with the data from your employees to see and doing a skills gap analysis to see, do we have the right workforce and skills and workforce, and then working to upskill our workforce either through employee development or training or through additional recruiting to make sure you have the right skills to optimize those operations. But removing the silos from that data to make sure that all of your data is in the right place at the right time to make the right decisions for your business. One of the challenges that businesses have today isn't that we don't have enough data. That's not a challenge that most businesses run into. There are billions of IoT devices across the planet that are constantly gathering data and feeding that data into data stores, and you have business applications that are constantly pulling that data into databases. But the challenge that we have is making sure that all of that data that's being gathered and stored is being brought into that common center that can be used with the right tools, with the right analysis, with the right intelligence, and being applied in the right locations to make sure that you can make the right decisions with that data. And that's what we're working towards with our Dynamics applications. Looking at Dynamics 365 and the Power Platform, this is the world's connected business cloud. This is connected data and applied intelligence at the center of this digital feedback loop, surrounded by the most comprehensive set of connected and intelligent business applications in the world today. Human resources is just a part of this, but across Dynamics, we have applications that bring together all of those business functions across those four areas of your business and bring those together allowing you to use tools of the Power Platform to analyze that, stored around a common data service on the Azure platform, connected to additional Microsoft tools like Microsoft 365, bringing all of that together so you have all the tools and resources that you need to analyze the data, to work with your data, and drive the right decisions and operations across your business. And this is the vision that we're working towards, is making sure that the data that is working with human resources can be applied across the intelligence of your entire business, and bringing that all together, not only with Dynamics 365, but with the Power Platform, being able to extend that out and allow third-party or additional partner applications across the human resources ecosystem to bring that data together and being able to operate across that and ensure that you have the right tools for your business. Let's look specifically at what that means within the context of human resources. As we look at the human resources ecosystem, the common data service within the Power Platform is at the center of our integration strategy. We need to make sure that the data that is being gathered and the operations that you have within that human resources application are extendable and can be applied across the human resources applications that you have. One of our core strategies in human resources is to ensure that we have a strong core of human resources application functionality. So we're working hard to extend the core functionality like leave and absence, the performance tracking, employee manager self-service, compensation and benefits, and making sure that that core HR functionality is strong within the application. And at the same time, we understand that our customers need access to the full breadth and depth of human resources functionality across the human resources ecosystem that we may not have directly within the core of the human resources application. Thus, we need to make sure that we have a strong integration story within the Dynamics 365 family of applications and extend that out to partner applications across the human resources ecosystem. So within this, we have making sure that we have our data within the common data service enables those integrations across, for example, expense management in Dynamics 365 for finance, and gathering that data from operations, doing assisted support and case management from Dynamics 365 customer service. But also as we build out our integrations in the common data service and build out that integration functionality, we see extensibility is a core focus for us, that building that out into the common data service, enabling you to use Power Apps, Power Automate, Azure tools and resources, Power Portals, just the breadth of the functionality of the Power Platform to be able to analyze that data and extend that out into even third-party applications. So one of our additional strategies that we'll talk through in this presentation is how we're extending the functionality of human resources to enable tighter integrations with those partner applications. For example, we're looking at LinkedIn Talent Hub, and we've created an integration to LinkedIn Talent Hub, but also creating a streamlined process for integrations from ATS partners who want a tight experience with the human resources application to be able to use that recruiting functionality of the ATS application and feed that data with a smooth end-to-end experience. Learning and development and payroll are also priority areas, but we continue to work on making sure that our integration story with the common data service and extending that out is a smooth experience for customers to continue to work with that and make sure that they have the right data in the right place so that their processes can work for their business. With that in mind, the agenda that we'll walk through in our presentation today is specifically around the feature enhancements that we've added in the 2020 release wave 2. Many of these have recently been released or are coming, and we'll talk through these individually. The first is a virtual entities in common data service. A core focus has been, as I talked through, in making sure that we can get data into the common data service so that it can be applied with those tools and expand out that integration functionality. And virtual entities is a big step in getting us to that point. An additional feature is LinkedIn Talent Hub integration. In making sure that we have ATS functionality that can be fed back into our human resources application. And additionally, recruiting integrations that have, in addition to that LinkedIn Talent Hub integration, expanding out and streamlining the end-to-end experience for additional recruiting integrations and building that out. And we'll take a look at what each of these looks like in a bit more detail. Let's start with virtual entities and common data service for human resources. So as an application, we have had entities in common data service for quite a while. We've had native entities that store our data in the common data service database. So what's the difference between virtual entities and native entities in common data service? If we look at this chart down here, we have our native entities. We have about 78 of those in common data service, and they provide CRUD operations directly into common data service database. And when you have those entities that write directly into common data service database, one of the challenges that we have is that we need a sync mechanism to ensure that the data stays synchronized between human resources and the CDS database. If you've ever designed or written a sync mechanism between two data stores, you know that there are challenges, especially when there may be differences in data restrictions between the two databases in what's allowed to be written to each of those and the business rules around those. So we have those, and it's as native entities in the database, but to expand that out and expand dramatically the story of our presence and footprint in the common data service, we've created virtual entities. Virtual entities, rather than storing that data directly in the common data service, the data continues to reside in the human resources database. And we've opened up a pipeline that allows that data to be read from as a virtual entity with CRUD operations, the create, read, update, delete operations against that data, writing that back directly into the common data service database. That opens up that data to be available in common data service, available on the Power Platform, just as those native entities are. But there are a couple main primary benefits to having these as virtual entities rather than native entities. The first primary benefit I kind of hinted at is that we have about 78 native entities. With our virtual entities released, just by turning on those virtual entities, it's lit up all of the data entities from human resources, and with that one action, we were able to light up almost 500 new entities in common data service, really expanding the footprint, the data footprint that we have within common data service, and opening up the scenarios that you can use for integrations and extensibility within common data service with your human resources data. With those new nearly 500 entities and more coming soon, we have that opens it up for use against that data with all of the tools that we have listed here on the left. We're using Power Apps, Power Automate, Power Apps Portals, Power BI, AI Builder, UCI apps, OData connections through the CDS Web API, and additional tools across the Power Platform, opening that data up so that you have all those tools and the ability to use that data in the right way to operate for your business. The second primary benefit of having these as virtual entities rather than native entities is that we have data validation against this data. That when we are writing data into a virtual entity, all of the business logic and business data validations that occur on that data when writing it into human resources are also applied to that virtual entity. So if you're trying to write a record into a virtual entity, you'll have the same validations that would happen as if you were entering that data directly into the application. So that this helps us really maintain data integrity, make sure that we can keep clean data without writing bad data into our database through virtual entities. Well, if you try to write a record through a virtual entity that wouldn't be accepted in the application, we send that error message back through, so you'll get a response that says why that data isn't allowed through that virtual entity, really helping you maintain that data integrity. So with all of this, we're expanding out that data footprint, enabling you to use the Power Platform with those virtual entities and opening that up quite a bit. Some other work that we have in progress with these virtual entities is to make sure that all of these entities are available through the CDS Web API. With many of the partner integrations that we're working against, Many of these are going to be using the CDS Web API to use OData connections for that integration between the two applications. So a primary goal is that we need to have parity with the CDS Web API native entity functionality of that OData API. And there have been some gaps, and that's an area that I want to call out specifically. That's an area of focus for us as we continue to build out our virtual entity functionality within CDS. For example, I have 3 listed there. That's work that's in process that will be coming shortly and available in the CDS Web API for those virtual entities. One is change tracking, or Delta token support, and this is an important aspect of OData connections because you need the ability to see what has changed in the data since the last time I made that call. And this, for example, if you have an app that you've written that does a synchronization of worker records between your application and the human resources application, human resources should continue to master that data, but you want to see what changes have happened as you open up your integrating application. So you can make a call in and refresh your list of workers within your application. If we don't have change tracking support, you have to refresh the entire list every time you make that call, which can be a significant challenge. But with change tracking, you're allowed to send in a Delta token that says, just give me all of the things that have changed within this list of data since the last time I made this call, and you just get the deltas back in your response, which really improves performance of the application and reduces the chatter that happens between your integrating application and the CDS data store. Another one is deep inserts, and this also helps us with performance and reducing the chatter between applications. And it's related to how entities work together with their relationships and the navigation properties between those entities and the and related entities. With deep inserts, if I am writing a record into a virtual entity and I want to write all related entities in with a single call, deep inserts allows that. So an example is if you're trying to write a new person record into human resources, and you want to write in the person record and all of their skills and all of their education and all of their work history and write all of that together, that can be done with deep inserts through navigation properties among those entities. Without those, each of those needs to be made as a separate call. And batching is related to that in that you can batch similar calls into a single call and send that into the database. So these are areas of functionality where we're working hard to make platform enhancements against the CDS Web API to make sure that the APIs and OData functionality of virtual entities is a smooth experience and really enables strong integrations between partner applications and those and the human resources application through CDS. Additionally, coming in a future release, another area is business events, being able to have those triggers of business events of things that happen within the human resources application that can trigger through CDS a notification that enables integrating applications to understand events that are happening within human resources and trigger off of those events. Similar to a webhook through an OData connection, but really based on business logic that's happening within human resources. And that's something that we're working on and will be coming in a future release. So let's jump over and take a look at what this looks like in the human resources application for virtual entities and common data service. We will in human resources, we'll look at where we deploy our virtual entities into common data service. So we go into system administration links, come down to integrations, and we see common data service configuration. The first screen that comes up, this is the page where you would enable our native entity functionality. And this is when you turn this on, this will have that will create the synchronization of data between the human resources data and those 78 native entities that are in human resources, that are in common data service rather. The new tab that we've added is the virtual entities tab. And this lists all of the nearly 500 virtual entities that are now available to be deployed into your Common Data Service instance. So I do want to call out, there is some setup that needs to be done before this list will be available here in Human Resources. There are some steps that you would need to go through to grant permissions against the CDS plugin to be able to pull this data in. And all of those steps are documented in detail on our Human Resources documentation. You can go take a look at our doc sites on docs.microsoft.com to find that information. It walks step by step very clearly in how to set that up and grant those permissions. Once those permissions are granted, this enable the virtual entity toggle is set to yes, and all of your virtual entities will populate the grid here, and you'll see the total number of virtual entities that have been generated in the Common Data Service. We also are able to see the status to see if it has been generated already or if it's currently available, and sort and filter to find the entities that you need to deploy. So we'll just say I want to find an available entity. We'll just say I want to deploy the third-party CDS entity. We could multi-select to send several of these and then generate refresh. And what this is doing is kicking off an asynchronous call that is calling a CDS API to generate those virtual entities within your Common Data Service instance. Once that begins, we get a notification that says the request was sent successfully, and that when the process is completed, it's an asynchronous, it's running in the background, we'll get a notification up here in the Action Center that says when that process is completed and the status of that when it's done. One thing to note, if by chance you do run into an issue with the deployment, there's a page where we can check on the status of that asynchronous call, see the process and see any error messages that may be returned if it doesn't complete successfully. Let's go look at our process automation, see where that happens. If we look at the process automations page and look at background processes, the process that we have in place here is the virtual entity pull async operation background process. When we select that, we can see that it's running and look at the most recent results to see what has happened recently within the calls that we've made. Last calls that I've made were successful, but if we scroll down the list, we see that there have been some that have failed. And if that does happen in your situation, you can view the any error information by looking at the log. So if we scroll down the list, we can hover over here and it shows us the error message. And in this case, it says identifiers can't be more than 48 characters long. That would be an error message. And maybe some of you, if you've already worked on deploying these, you may have run into this. This is an issue that we've fixed, and this fix is rolling out globally. So if you do run into this, continue trying. The fix for this is being rolled out as we speak. But if you do, this would be the place where you begin your troubleshooting if this is a process that you go through. But once this does complete successfully, we can go over to our solutions in the Power Apps portal. And this is where our virtual entities are going to show up for our company. If we look at HCM Common is the list. It's our native entity solution. And this is what you traditionally would have used with data synchronizing back and forth between human resources and those native entities. The new virtual entity solution is Dynamics 365 HR virtual entities. And once those entities are generated, this is where you'll be able to come and see all the detail of all the entities that you've deployed to your Common Data Service. So if I want to see all of the entities associated with positions, we can filter down to that. We'll select positions V2. It then shows us all of the properties associated with this entity gives us the name, gives us detail, and allows us then to look at data. We can then work against this data just as we would a native entity. Well, with that functionality that allows us to get the data with CRUD operations against that data directly here in the Power Platform. Let's look at just briefly a couple examples to show how we can do those CRUD operations against this data in Common Data Service. First, I want to look at Power BI. Let's jump over to Power BI Desktop Builder. We won't build anything too complicated, but if you've worked with Power BI before, you know that there's a really rich set of tools that allows you to build some really beautiful and detailed reports that lets you dig into your data and drive value from that data. For this, I just want to show primarily just how to connect to your data through Common Data Service and those virtual entities and build a pretty simple report. So you would start out by saying get data, and we'll get data to get started. And in the search, we would search for Common Data Service, which then brings up our Common Data Service connection. When we select that, we click Connect, and it's going to ask us for our server URL. Let's go back to Common Data Service. For this instance, in the Power Platform Admin Center, or there's other places that you can get the same URL, you want to get the environment URL for your environment and copy that. Make sure HTTPS is on the front of it. Make sure you have your environment URL in there. Click OK. And that'll then connect to your Common Data Service instance, and which includes all of the entities that you have deployed, both native entities and virtual entities associated with this instance. So then in the list, we click our dropdown, and we have the full list of all of the entities that I have available to me for building reports. And with nearly 500 entities, virtual entities from human resources, it really gives you the ability to drive value from that data, that you have access to all of that data for building these reports directly in Power BI. Note that all of the entities that are virtual entities for human resources have an MSHR prefix. So we'll type in the MSHR prefix. And let's just grab our skills entity. This is the entity that lists all of the skills or preferred skills per job. So we'll select this entity, load it. And as this loads, what we can do with this data, and pretty quickly, what we'll do is just create a report that allows us to see. This will answer questions of what are the required skills across our organization. I want to get a high-level view of all of the skills that are needed across my organization to start doing just a simplified skills gap analysis within a Power BI report. So let's take our skill ID. Right, for each job, and just pretty quickly, this isn't a complex report, but just quickly demonstrating that how quickly we can get from a virtual entity to visualizing our data in Power BI from a virtual entity and making that quick connection to our data source to pull that data in. So when we see this is the list of all the skills that are required per job and how common it is for each of those jobs. So I can start to get a sense of what are the most important skills across my organization, and then give me ideas of do I need to start doing training? Do I need to start with performance or employee development in these areas, or do I need to start focusing more on these areas in my recruiting? So pretty quickly and easily. We could add to the legend to see what's the importance of these with the level ID for each of these, and really get into digging into a lot of the visualizations and tools that are enabled with Power BI, but all of that is enabled by giving you access to that data within the Power Platform. From here, once you can spend time cleaning this up and making it as pretty as you need it to be, and visualize all the data in the exact form that you need, and then publish this out so that it's available across your organization, and share that out with other individuals so all that data can be seen by others in the organization and have that available, all enabled by those virtual entities within the Power Platform. Let's go look at one other example of how we can use this data in the Power Platform. If we go back to Power Apps, let's just quickly create an app against a virtual entity. So there are lots of options for building apps. We'll just quickly build one that shows us our positions list. So within our list of entities, once we get into Common Data Service, it shows us the list of all our CDS entities, and all of them that have MSHR. Again, MSHR indicates that it's a virtual entity for the human resources application, and we can select the entity that we want to use for our app. As this is loading, it's building just a quick app off the template, and we can make a couple of quick changes to this by working against that data source of the virtual entity. So from here, we say edit our properties against the data source, and I would like my subtitle 2 to be title. Let's say the body to be worker name. Go to the details screen, modify our data source against our positions v2 virtual entity, and we can add any of the fields that are available within that entity directly from here. So we'll say I want to add a description, and I want to add the job, and I want to add worker name and title. Those are then added, and we can see the detail of that pulled in from that virtual entity. And we can do the same thing from our edit screen. So if we want to edit this data, we're also able to do that through the virtual entity. Select our edit form, select the data source that's used for that edit form. Let's add those same fields. I think I had description, job, title, worker. Hope that's the same. We'll add that, and then that updates. And that quickly, we have an app that we can use that works against that virtual entity. So we're looking at the 00023 position. Let's just make sure that this is going to work when we update this data through a Power App and see if this works against our data. So we'll go find that position in our application. This was 00023, and we'll update the description through our Power App. So we'll run the Power App. Select our application, select to edit, change the description. can save that. So this is built against that virtual entity. It's using those CRUD operations that allow us to write data against this virtual entity to do that update directly against our data in human resources. So if we come back here and refresh, this should change to show our new description is Store Manager Northern Europe. So with virtual entities, and these were just a couple of quick examples, but it really opens up possibilities of what you can do with your data in the Power Platform, using Power Apps, using Power Automate, using Power BI, using those Power Portals, and all of that other rich functionality that's available in the Power Platform. Another tool here is AI Builder. And if you're building a Power App and want to apply intelligence against that data in your Power App, this gives you that AI Builder. There are a lot of AI tools that are available to you, democratizing that intelligence against your data to help you drive that value from it. I guess a quick example would be with sentiment analysis. If you have an app that is showing all of your performance review information and you just want to get a feel of how positive or negative that the comments are within across your organization within performance reviews, this would give you that ability. It can using that app, viewing the text of all of your performance evaluations across the organization, it can give you a feel for if it's positive or negative and what that score is and that sentiment analysis across your organization. So that may or may not be something that you want to build for your org, but it kind of gives you a feel of how you can use that artificial intelligence to drive value, pulling that value out of the data that you have within your database, because all of the tools are available for you there in Power Platform, driven by getting your data and entities into the right place so you can build these tools on top of that using the Power Platform. All right, let's jump back to the slide deck and move on to some of the other areas that we're working on with integrations. Also, just a quick announcement, we recently announced that virtual entities are now available for global general availability. So these are available for you both in sandbox environments and production environments for you to start working with. So go ahead, give them a try and provide feedback. We always want to hear feedback on the experiences that you're having with these virtual entities. Let us know how you're doing. aka.ms/HRideas is a good place to go, but also feel free to reach out to us on the engineering team to contact us and provide us feedback on the experiences that you have with the application. The next area that we're going to talk about is partner integrations. Two areas that we want to talk about, and both related to recruiting integrations. The first one is an integration with LinkedIn Talent Hub. LinkedIn Talent Hub is it's an ATS applicant tracking system that provides an end-to-end experience for sourcing and building up a talent pool and working the pool of talent and candidates through the hiring and recruiting process to find candidates for positions within your organization. The integration that we have with LinkedIn Talent Hub is once a candidate has been selected for a position, being able to send that candidate information into Dynamics 365 Human Resources so that we can initiate the process of onboarding and building that employee record for that candidate. And we'll take a quick look at how that works in our next demo. But in addition to that lightweight integration with LinkedIn Talent Hub of just bringing in that candidate record, we're building out a framework that enables tighter integrations with an end-to-end experience through Common Data Service and integrations with additional integrating partners. With the talent acquisition integration, here's an example of the end-to-end flow. We have Claire, she's an HR manager who does all of her work in the human resources application. Brooke is a recruiter who does her work within a partner applicant tracking system. And we have several applications that will be building these integrations, but it will be one of those where Brooke can, in human resources, open up management self-service, create a request to recruit, fill out all the information of what she needs for the position for her team as she's hiring, and that information will be sent across to the partner applicant tracking system, allowing Brooke to begin posting that position, reviewing the detail, finding the candidates, doing all the interviewing and working through that pipeline down to the point where we can select the individual candidate for the position, make the offer, and have that offer accepted. And then we close the loop at the other end by, once that candidate is selected for the requested position, we send that candidate record back into human resources with all the detail that's been collected through that recruiting pipeline for that candidate, so that information can be used to initiate the employee record and begin onboarding that employee through that process. So let's take a look at this experience within human resources. First, let's look at LinkedIn Talent Hub. So in Talent Hub, you will set up your project for the position for which you're hiring. In this case, I'm looking for a new human resources director for my organization. I have a couple fantastic candidates, and at the end of the recruiting process, we've selected Claire to be our new human resources director, and we've moved her to the hired status within this recruiting pipeline. Once that's completed, an action here on the ellipsis menu is now export to HRIS. When we select that, it opens up Claire's record and opens up the export to HRIS pane. And I can now select Microsoft Dynamics 365 Human Resources as an integrating HRIS, which would be a human resources integrating system. We would make sure that our start date is correct, the job title is correct, and the location is correct, and any contact information that will be exported as well. And then click Export. You can look at recruiting activities. This will show the status of what's happening. Right now it's notifying, which means it sent that call over to human resources, and this will show you the status of how that is going. Once we come back over to human resources, let's look at personnel management. And it looks like that process is already completed. That we now have, within our candidates to hire section, we have Claire Kennedy, Human Resources Director, and the additional information that was brought over from Talent Hub. When we can then continue through onboarding and create that employee record by selecting the hire action. This brings out the hire new worker form, where we can enter any additional detail that we need to for Claire, make sure that we've selected the correct position, and then we can hire and add details. This then creates that employee record, and if we had workflow enabled, workflow approvals can be part of this process, the actions framework can be part of this process, and additional onboarding can be inserted into this process as we work through with that hiring the new worker. But we then at this point have Claire Kennedy. Once that process is completed, we have her as a new employee record and can fill out that additional detail. So that's the lightweight integration that we have with LinkedIn Talent Hub. We are working with additional recruiting partners on a more seamless end-to-end experience for those recruiting integrations with that ATS. So kind of that end-to-end that I showed on the slide of being able to begin with a recruiting request and end with bringing that candidate record back into human resources. So let's look at this experience by starting in personnel management. If I am an HR pro and I am in personnel management in my USMF company, one of the new pages that we have added is recruiting requests. I can select this, and this will show me the list of all of the recruiting requests that have been created for this company. And these are all company specific, and we can see that in the identifier USMF-identifier, so that these are specific to this company with the recruiting process. I can filter this to status to see just my active ones, but this shows me the full list of the recruiting requests that have been made within my company, and I can begin to act against these as an HR pro. If I am a hiring manager, on the other hand, I want to begin the recruiting process for my team. I need to bring somebody onto my team. I can do that from the management self-service portal. So we select employee self-service, I select my team, and this is where I'm managing my team, the data of my team in general. where I do performance assessments, I plan and schedule trainings. All of that detail that I'm doing with my team is done with this in this management self-service portal. And now we've added also the recruiting requests. So we have on this list the list of all the recruiting requests that I, as a manager, have created for my team, and I can look at these, review these, see the status, and modify these as needed, change the status as needed. If I need to create a new recruiting request, we've added the action up here, request to recruit. I would select this, say, enters basic information there, job. Every recruiting request requires a job to be selected, and we have an estimated start date. When we continue, that then creates a recruiting request for us, entering me as the hiring manager, and then I can start filling out additional detail as needed. If I have a specific recruiter that is needed, I can select a location for that will be the location at which this new employee will be working. We have an estimated start date, a status, and it's linked to a specific job. And then all of the detail that's added in the rest of the recruiting request, this can default from that job, because all of that information, the preferred skills, the preferred education, all of this is information that's already stored on that job record. So we'd select create details from job if we want that information defaulted in from the job record. That gives us an external job description, which would be the intended description that would be posted externally for your new employees to read and apply for. This, once it defaults in, it can all be modified. So we have the external description, we have our skills that defaulted in, our education requirements, and also compensation levels default in from the job record. All of that is default, but then can be modified if there are specific requirements for this detailed position. In addition to that, we can then add one-to-many positions to this recruiting request. So if I want to hire for this specific headcount, we have our project manager, we have the status, and we can add additional ones if we're doing bulk hiring, if we have those bulk hiring scenarios that we need to. But once this is all filled out, this is at the point where I'm ready to begin recruiting. I would then activate. I click activate, it sets the status to active, and that signals to the recruiting application that I'm ready to begin recruiting for this position, and Brooke can then kick off the hiring process. With that integrating app, this comes back to the work that we're doing to improve the CDS Web API platform functionalities to ensure that the integrating application can get that data, either through the Power Platform or directly through the CDS Web API. Just looking at a quick example of this, all of the functionality is available through the CDS Web API. We can look at the metadata to see we have our recruiting request entities. We can see all the properties. We can see the navigation properties and see all the detail of this API directly from the metadata within this application. But let's take a look and get look at this recruiting request. Probably need to refresh my token quickly. Give me authorization to make this call, but then an integrating application can call to the CDS Web API and get all of the related information for this recruiting request. We've called for a specific recruiting request. We've expanded out to get all of the positions associated with that request, all the education requirements for that request, all of the skills for this request, and all of this can be pulled together using those navigation properties into a single call. So I can grab all that detail as an integrating application and then build that into my application so Brooke on the other side can begin that begin the recruiting process for this recruiting request. So that's the integrating application experience. But then on the other side of that, Brooke has gone through the recruiting process, selected that candidate, and is now ready to create or send back to human resources that candidate to hire. So we're going to create a new candidate record in human resources for Evelyn Chambers. So when we send this is the recruiting application, completing that loop, sending that record back into human resources. For this one, this is just the header record, but as we finish out the deep inserts functionality, we'll be able to send the candidate record and all associated properties, the skills, education requirements, all of that in a single call to send that into human resources to create that recruiting, that candidate record. So let's go back to human resources and see what the experience is on the candidate side. So the other piece is we've expanded out the candidate functionality and candidates to hire to give a more complete view of the candidate record in human resources. So if we come back to personnel management, you see Evelyn Chambers is the new record that was just created with that API call. And we can select this record, which then opens up the candidate and brings us to all of the detail that can be associated with that candidate. The professional experience, addresses, contact information, education, really all of the information that you would gather through that hiring process can be brought in and stored with this candidate record so that that we have that data here to begin the initiation of that employee process, of the employee record. This then is similar to what we saw with the LinkedIn integration experience of, let's look at Claire Kennedy, recognizing that we can have both internal and external candidates. If it's an internal candidate, then we'll be able to hire similar to what we did with that LinkedIn record. But if it's an internal candidate, then we have change position, where we can change the position and do a transfer, do an internal transfer rather than creating a brand new employee record. In this case, we have actions enabled. We can do a transfer action, select the actual date of when this change will be made. And then if we have workflows associated with this, workflow approvals can also happen at this point, but at this point we don't have those workflows enabled, so we would just select continue, and that then updates our candidate record and updates the creates the, because I have actions enabled, we create this action. Once this action is completed, it will create a new position, worker position assignment for Claire and complete that onboarding process. And then we continue through our regular processes that are existing in human resources to make sure that those employee records are updated correctly. So this is kind of the end-to-end experience. And there's a couple other pages here and there that allow us to get access to this data and see the lists of data and candidates within human resources. But this is the overall experience of that end-to-end integrated process of being able to create that recruiting request, send that information out to an ATS that has that rich, full-featured functionality of walking through the recruiting pipeline, and then sending back that candidate information to complete the loop, and making sure that we have that good experience through the common data service integrations to bring all that data together and make sure that your company has the processes in place that it needs to bring on the correct employees. One last note is talking about these applicant tracking systems. We have some applicant tracking systems already in place that that have integrations with Dynamics 365 Human Resources. This is an area of focus for us, and several of these already have integrations with Dynamics 365 Human Resources. iCIMS is one that has an integration coming soon, and we have other partners that will also be building these to give customers access to the right applications that they need within our human resources ecosystem. And all of this really fills out that integration story of making sure that within your business you have the right applications in place, you have the data, all of your data working together within that digital feedback loop to give you the rich functionality that you need to make the right decisions for your business and operations. With that, we'll say thank you. Thank you very much for your attention. I believe Colin has been answering questions throughout, but we have a few minutes left to open up for Q&A as well.
So we have a couple questions here that we can I can throw you as part of the starter. Probably the most recent one here is related to, I believe, to the LinkedIn integration. How does the job appear in Talent Hub, and is there an integration for that as well?
That's a good question. With our integration with Talent Hub right now is a lightweight integration. That the only touch point that we have on our LinkedIn side is bringing in the candidate record. The project itself still needs to be created manually within Talent Hub. We have discussions in place with the LinkedIn team to continue to expand out that integration over time, but currently it's just that lightweight integration to bring in the candidate record at the end of that recruiting process.
Okay, then kind of two more questions, kind of in a related bucket of kind of future integration plans. There's one question around ADP Workforce. Is that something we're looking into? And is there any news we want to share on an integration with Azure Active Directory?
With ADP Workforce, well, we do have conversations in place with several other partners. I can't announce the names of partners that we're working with now until we've completed our business processes to make sure that the agreements are in place with those business relationships. But we do have conversations in place with several other partners around the learning integrations, around recruiting integrations, around payroll integrations, and other integrations as well. This is a core part of our strategy to make sure that we are expanding out and opening up our human resources ecosystem to enable other partners to build into our application and platform. So those conversations are ongoing. I can't announce any additional partners at this time, but know that it's something that's on our plate, and it's very very important in our long-term strategy to make sure that we have these integrations in place for our customers. Regarding the Azure Active Directory integration, that is one that we did have on our roadmap for the 2020 Wave 2 release, but that one we had to. There were some things that pushed that integration out, and it is now on our roadmap for the 2021 Wave 1 release. So that one is currently looking to be available around the April to May timeframe, but we're still working to finalize our timelines on that feature. Know that it is important for us. We're hearing it loud and clear from customers that that's an important integration, and making sure that as employees are onboarded in the organization, that we have that integration with Azure Active Directory to create those users and make sure that information stays synchronized. That's something that we clearly recognize the value. We hear customers loud and clear. There are just things in place that have prevented us from getting that on the time frame that we've wanted. So we've had to shift the timeline out, but know that it's still a priority for us, and we'll get it out as quickly as we can.
And at the moment, that's all the questions we have that have not been answered.
All right. Well, we have just a few seconds left, so it's perfect timing with the questions. But thank you, Colin. Thank you, everyone, for joining in the conversation. This has been great. Continue to provide feedback. Please send us feedback, aka.ms/HRideas, and let us know how you feel about the features that we're releasing. We want to get your feedback and continue to work with you to improve the product long term, especially around these areas of integrations and extensibility. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Jared. We would also like to get your feedback on today's session, and I've posted a link to a short survey in that Q&A panel. We value your feedback and welcome your input on how we did today and what you would like to see in future sessions. That survey scores on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being the highest score possible, and we thank you for your participation in that. Attendees can access the web conference recording via the same registration link used to attend today's live broadcast. I'd like to extend a big thank you to our presenters and a thank you to our audience for logging in and joining us today. Please stay safe and have a great rest of your day or evening wherever you are. Goodbye.